Caleb had been riding the old trail for years, ever since he was a boy learning how to guide cattle across the long valley. The trail cut along the ridgeline above the river, a quiet place where the wind always carried the smell of pine and warm dust. He often came here when he needed space to think, or when the ranch work became too heavy on his mind. On that late afternoon, he didn't expect to find anyone there, especially not someone who looked as lost as the girl he saw sitting near the edge. At first, he thought she was resting, maybe gathering herbs, or simply watching the sunset. But as he rode closer, he noticed her posture. Her shoulders were shaking slightly, and her hands were pressed to her face. Her clothes were dusty, the kind of dust that came from walking a long way under the sun. The old beads in her hair were tangled, as if she had brushed through bushes or hurried down rough paths. It took Caleb only a moment to realize she wasn't just tired. She was upset. Deeply upset. He slowed his horse, keeping respectful distance. He knew enough about Apache territory to understand the importance of space and caution. His father had always taught him never to approach anyone in distress too quickly, no matter who they were. So Caleb stopped a few steps away, letting the horse settle quietly. The girl didn't look up. She didn't even seem to notice him at first. Caleb cleared his throat lightly, not wanting to startle her. "Are you all right?" he asked in a gentle tone, his voice soft enough to float with the breeze rather than cut through it. Naya lifted her face, and Caleb saw her eyes red and swollen. The kind of look someone gets after crying for hours. She stared at him like she wasn't sure if he was real. Her breathing was uneven, as if she had been holding everything inside for too long. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. "I can't take it anymore," she whispered, shaking her head. "I want to do it here and now." The words hit Caleb like a sudden punch of cold air. He didn't understand what she meant, not exactly, but he understood the exhaustion behind them. The way she said it wasn't loud or angry. It was tired, so tired that he felt the heaviness of it settle on his chest. He didn't move closer, but he made sure she knew he was listening. "Okay," he said carefully. "I don't know what's happened, but I can see you're hurting. Do you want to talk?" For a moment, Naya didn't answer. She looked out over the wide valley, her eyes distant and empty. The sun was sinking lower, painting the sky in soft orange. But it didn't warm her expression at all. She looked like someone who had been carrying a heavy burden for a long time, and that burden had finally crushed her spirit. Caleb waited, giving her time. He had learned patience from the ranch. Cattle didn't move faster just because someone wanted them to. People were the same. You had to let them breathe. Let them choose when to speak. When Naya finally broke the silence, her voice was steadier, but still filled with sadness. "I left home," she said. "I didn't plan to. I just ran. I couldn't stay there anymore." Caleb nodded slowly. "Something happened?" She laughed softly, but it wasn't joyful. It was a broken laugh. "Something always happens. My uncle wants me to marry a man I don't even know. He says it's for the good of the family, for the tribe. But no one asks what I want. No one listens when I try to speak." She looked down at her hands, turning them over as if she were searching for answers written on her skin. "My parents died when I was young," she continued quietly. "I stayed with my uncle because he was the only family left. He fed me. He gave me a place to sleep. But he never tried to understand me. He says I must do what the tribe expects. He says my feelings don't matter." Caleb listened carefully, not interrupting. He could see the conflict inside her, the respect she had for her family, and the pain caused by their decisions. He had felt a similar fight inside himself after his father passed away. Expectations could be heavy, even silent ones. "What do you want?" Caleb finally asked. Naya looked up again, and this time her eyes were filled with raw honesty. "I want to choose my own life. I want to learn healing from the village woman who knows plants and medicine. I want to help people. But my uncle says it's foolish. He says I should accept the marriage and stop dreaming." She shook her head again, tears rising. "I came here because I thought If I stayed alone long enough, maybe the world would make sense. But it doesn't. And I don't know how much more I can take. Caleb felt something twist inside him. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't especially wise. But he knew pain when he saw it. And he knew no one should face it alone. He slowly reached for the water flask hanging from his saddle and held it out to her not too close, just enough for her to choose whether she wanted it. You don't have to decide everything today, he said softly. But you shouldn't face it hungry or thirsty. Drink. It'll help. Naya hesitated, then accepted the flask with shaking hands. She drank slowly, almost as if each swallow reminded her she was still alive and still strong enough to keep going. When she handed it back, she finally looked directly at him with a hint of gratitude. "You're not afraid of me?" she asked. Caleb blinked, surprised. "Afraid? No. But I'm careful. Not because of who you are, only because I want to respect you." She studied him for a moment. No man from outside her tribe had ever spoken to her like that before. Calm. Honest. Without judging her, or trying to control her. It felt strange but comforting. The wind picked up, carrying dust across the ridge and tossing strands of her hair around her face. Caleb noticed her shaking slightly. Not from fear, but from exhaustion. He didn't push her to explain more. She had said enough for now. He sat down a few feet away. Close enough to show he wasn't leaving. Far enough to show she had space. His horse grazed quietly behind him, adding a peaceful sound to the quiet moment. After several minutes, Naya spoke again, her voice gentler this time. "I thought leaving would make me strong, but now I feel lost." "You're not lost," Caleb replied. "You're tired. Those aren't the same thing." She looked at him, thinking deeply about his words. It was the first time someone had separated those feelings for her. "You said you want to do something here and now," Caleb continued carefully. "What did you mean?" Naya breathed slowly, letting the words settle between them before answering. "I meant, I want to choose my own life. I want to make the decision now. Today. I don't want to go back and pretend everything is fine." Caleb nodded with relief. Her words were serious, but they were not dangerous, only heavy with emotion and frustration. They were the words of someone standing at a crossroads, afraid to take the next step. "You're brave," Caleb said gently. "Not because you ran, but because you're facing the truth of what you feel." Naya stared at him, surprised. "No one has ever called me brave." Then they haven't been paying attention. For the first time since he found her, a small smile appeared on her face. It wasn't a big smile, but it was real. And it changed the whole atmosphere around them, like a single star appearing in a dark sky. The sun dipped lower, turning the valley gold. Caleb could see she was growing more relaxed, as if she no longer felt like she had to defend her feelings. He didn't try to persuade her to go home. He didn't promise her things he couldn't deliver. He simply stayed by her side, offering quiet support. As the first evening breeze touched their faces, Naya whispered, "Thank you for listening." Caleb nodded. "You're welcome. Sometimes that's all a person needs." Naya looked out over the land once more, but this time with slightly clearer eyes. Maybe the world wasn't ready to make sense yet, but for the first time that day, she didn't feel completely alone. The sun dipped behind the distant hills as Naya and Caleb sat quietly on the ridge. The silence between them no longer felt heavy, it felt calm, like the earth had finally stopped shaking under her feet. Naya took a slow breath, letting the cool evening air fill her lungs. The earlier panic and despair had not disappeared completely, but they no longer controlled her. Caleb's steady presence helped steady her too. Caleb noticed her breathing becoming more even. "Do you feel a little better?" he asked gently. Naya nodded. "Somewhat. I don't know what I'm going to do, but talking helped." "I'm glad," Caleb said with a small smile. "Sometimes the weight feels lighter when shared." Naya looked at him again, studying the calm expression on his face. He wasn't trying to solve her life for her, and that made her feel safe. She wasn't used to being heard. Not like this. Most of the time, others told her what she should feel instead of letting her speak. "I didn't know what I expected," she said quietly. When I left home this morning, I felt like the world was closing in around me. I thought being alone would help, but on the way here, everything just grew louder inside my head. I think, Caleb nodded slowly. I've felt that too, he admitted. When my father passed, people kept telling me how to run the ranch. They meant well, but it felt like I was being pushed in every direction. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. Sometimes I rode here just to get away from all the advice. Did it help? Naya asked. Not at first, but over time, this place became somewhere I could hear my own thoughts again. Naya lowered her eyes, picking at the edge of her torn sleeve. I wish I had a place like that. You do now, Caleb said gently. Whenever you need space, this ridge will wait for you. The words touched her more deeply than he realized. Home did not feel like home anymore. But here, on this rugged ridge overlooking the valley, she felt something she hadn't felt in months: freedom. A soft breeze lifted the strands of her hair, brushing them across her cheek. She closed her eyes, letting the air cool her face. When she opened them again, the valley below was slipping into twilight. The colors shifted into deep gold and soft purple, like the world was calming itself. But peace never lasted long. A distant sound carried up the ridge, hooves striking hard ground. Caleb stiffened slightly. Naya's breath caught. Someone was coming. Caleb stood slowly, careful not to startle her. He scanned the lower trail and saw two riders approaching. Even in fading light, he recognized the clothing and the way they sat on their horses. They were Apache men, likely from Naya's village. Naya's shoulders tightened. Her fingers curled into her palms. They're looking for me, she whispered in a shaken voice. Caleb didn't move closer but kept his voice steady. You're not in any danger here. But if you don't feel ready to speak to them, I won't let them pressure you. Naya looked conflicted. A part of her feared being found, but another part knew running forever wasn't possible. She took a deep breath and stood slowly beside Caleb. As the riders reached the base of the ridge, the two men dismounted and climbed toward them. Their faces were stern, but not hostile. They looked tired, maybe even worried. When they reached the top, one of them, an older man, spoke first. Naya, he said, your uncle has been searching for you all day. Why did you leave without a word? Naya swallowed hard. Her voice trembled slightly. I needed time to think. The older man glanced at Caleb, and suspicion flickered in his eyes. What is this cowboy doing with you? Caleb remained calm. I found her here alone. She seemed upset. I only offered water and stayed with her so she wouldn't be by herself. You should not interfere with our matters, the man said sharply. Naya stepped forward before Caleb could reply. Her voice was steadier this time. He didn't interfere. I asked him nothing, and he asked nothing of me. I just needed someone to listen. The younger Apache man looked relieved to see her unharmed. Your uncle was worried. We all were. You vanished during the morning gathering. Naya lowered her gaze. She never meant to cause trouble. She only wanted freedom to breathe. But seeing the worry in their faces made guilt stir inside her. Even though she felt unheard, she knew not everyone in the tribe wanted to silence her. I'm not ready to return yet, she said quietly. The older man frowned. Your uncle wants you home now. He fears you ran off because of the marriage discussion. Naya took a deep breath, her chin lifting slightly. I did run because of that. I am not ready for marriage. And I will not agree to someone I barely know. The two men exchanged looks. It wasn't common for a young woman to speak so boldly about tribal decisions. But there was something in the way she spoke, a strength they couldn't ignore. We cannot force you, the older man said slowly. But we must take word back to your uncle. Tell him I am safe, Naya replied. Tell him I need time. I will return when I am ready to talk, not before. The men hesitated, unsure if her words would satisfy her uncle. But they saw the firmness in her expression. She wasn't being reckless, she was being honest. We will tell him, the younger man finally said. He will not be pleased, but he will know you are unharmed. Caleb stayed silent through the entire exchange, only speaking when the men turned to leave. She can stay here for now. She's safe. The Apache men nodded reluctantly and made their way back down the ridge. Their figures grew smaller as they moved into the twilight. When they disappeared behind a patch of trees, Naya let out a long, shaky breath. "I thought they would drag me back," she said softly. Caleb shook his head. "They care about you. They're just worried. But it's clear they also respect your voice more than you thought." Naya wrapped her arms around herself, still processing everything. "My uncle will be angry." Claude. Claude. Clauded. 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 "Maybe," Caleb said, "but anger doesn't erase truth. You spoke honestly. Sometimes that's the strongest thing a person can do." Naya didn't answer for a moment. She stared at the shadows stretching across the valley, thinking about the life she wanted and the courage it took to step toward it. Caleb didn't rush her. He just stood nearby, calm as ever. As darkness settled, he spoke again. "It'll be night soon. You shouldn't stay out here alone. My sister has a cabin nearby. She's kind, and she'll welcome you without questions." Naya's eyes widened slightly. "Your sister?" "She's older than me," Caleb explained. "Wiser, too. She's helped many people who needed a safe place to rest." Naya hesitated. She had run away from home because she needed space, not because she wanted to depend on strangers. But Caleb had proven himself gentle and respectful. If his sister was anything like him, maybe she could trust her too. "I don't want to cause trouble," Naya murmured. "You won't," Caleb assured softly. "You just need a peaceful night." After a long pause, Naya nodded. "All right, I'll go." Caleb felt relief wash through him. He guided his horse down the ridge, walking beside Naya, to make sure the path was safe in the dim light. She followed quietly, her steps slow but determined, the sky above them filled with stars, each one shining like a tiny promise that things could still change. The cabin wasn't far, just beyond a line of trees near a small creek. Warm light glowed from the window, and the smell of soup and fresh bread drifted gently into the air. When Caleb knocked, a woman with kind eyes opened the door. She looked at Naya, then at Caleb, and instantly understood something serious had happened. "Come in," she said softly. "You're safe here." For the first time in a long time, Naya felt warmth, not from the fire, but from kindness. And as she stepped inside, she realized the world hadn't closed in on her after all. There were still places where she could breathe. The warm light from the cabin wrapped around Naya like a soft blanket the moment she stepped inside. She had expected an unfamiliar home to make her uneasy, but instead, something settled inside her chest, as if a place she had never seen before somehow felt familiar. Mary, Caleb's older sister, moved with gentle confidence. She didn't stare, didn't pry, and didn't ask questions that would make Naya uncomfortable. She simply offered a quiet smile and gestured toward the wooden table where a bowl of warm soup waited. "You look tired," Mary said softly. Naya sat down, feeling the weight of the long day slowly pulling at her muscles. The steam rising from the bowl warmed her face, and the smell reminded her of evenings when her own mother used to cook simple meals over the fire. She hadn't felt that kind of safety in years. She took a small spoonful, and the warmth spread through her chest. Caleb sat a short distance away, giving her space but remaining close enough so she knew she wasn't alone. Mary handed her a cup of warm tea after the soup. "It helps calm the nerves," she said kindly. Naya wrapped her hands around the cup, letting the heat travel through her fingers. She didn't speak for a long time. Not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't know where to start. Everything inside her felt tangled: fear, sadness, anger, and a strange sense of relief that she had spoken her truth earlier on the ridge. Caleb noticed her hesitation. "You don't have to explain anything right now," he said gently. "Just rest." His words lifted a bit more of the heaviness inside her. She finished her tea slowly, feeling calmer than she had since morning. After a little silence, Her voice finally found its way out. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," she said quietly. "I didn't want people to be worried." Mary pulled a chair closer, not too close, and sat facing her. "Sometimes people worry because they care," she said. "But caring doesn't mean they always understand. What matters is how you feel." Naya blinked, surprised by the simple kindness in Mary's tone. It had been a long time since someone cared about her feelings without judgment. "I felt like I couldn't breathe," Naya admitted. "Everything kept getting heavier and heavier. I just wanted one moment where I could think, without someone telling me what I must do." Mary nodded gently. "Wanting space doesn't make you wrong, it makes you human." Naya's eyes softened. "I didn't even know where I was going when I left. My feet just kept moving. I felt like I was running from something too big to face." Caleb leaned forward slightly. "But you did face it. You spoke to your tribe's men with honesty. That takes courage." Naya lowered her gaze, feeling a small warmth inside her chest. "I didn't feel brave. I just felt desperate." "Even desperation can turn into strength," Mary said. "As long as you don't let it swallow you." Naya took another deep breath. The cabin was quiet, except for the soft popping of the fire. Outside, the night settled deeper, shadows stretching across the land. Somehow, she felt safer here than she had expected. She hadn't realized how lonely she had been until now. Caleb stood up and walked to a shelf where Mary kept some blankets. He pulled one down and handed it to her. "You can rest on the small bed in the corner," he said. "It's not fancy, but it's warm." "You're very kind," Naya whispered. "Both of you." Mary shook her head with a smile. "Kindness is not a burden. Sit by the fire as long as you like. When you're ready to rest, the bed is yours." Quote, Naya watched the fire crackle for a moment. Do you think I did wrong by running?" Caleb thought for a moment before answering. "I think you did what you needed to do. Sometimes the first step toward knowing yourself is stepping away from everyone else." Mary added, "Running isn't always escape. Sometimes it's searching." The word settled deep in Naya's heart. She had never thought of it that way. Maybe she wasn't weak for walking away. Maybe she was trying to protect something inside herself that she hadn't yet understood. She finally stood and moved toward the small bed. The blanket felt soft between her fingers. She lay down gently, pulling it up to her shoulders. Caleb stepped outside to check on the horses and give her privacy. Mary dimmed the lantern and left a soft glow in the room. As Naya closed her eyes, the events of the day drifted through her mind: the argument in the morning, the fear, the long walk, the tears on the ridge, Caleb's calm voice, and the warmth of the cabin now around her. For the first time in months, sleep didn't feel like something she had to fight for. Instead, it came gently, pulling her into a quiet world where her problems felt smaller for a little while. She slept deeply through the night. No bad dreams, no heavy shadows, only peace. When morning light slipped through the window, Naya stirred. She blinked slowly, adjusting to the brightness. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then the smell of warm bread reached her nose, and the memory returned. She sat up slowly, stretching her arms, feeling rested in a way she hadn't expected. Mary looked over from the table where she was slicing fruit. "Good morning," she said kindly. "How did you sleep?" Naya smiled faintly. "Better than I have in a long time." Caleb entered through the door right then, brushing off dust from his jacket. "The horses are already awake," he said. "Thought you might want breakfast before the day starts." Naya's eyes softened again. She didn't know why these two strangers cared so much, but she was grateful. She joined them at the table. Caleb said little, letting Mary guide the conversation. They talked about simple things: weather, the creek nearby, the growing season. Nothing heavy. And that simplicity felt healing. After breakfast, Naya stepped outside to feel the morning air. The sun warmed her face as she stood near the creek. Caleb joined her after a few minutes, giving her space but staying close enough to be supportive. "You seem calmer today," he said gently. "I feel calmer," she replied. "But I don't know what I'm supposed to do now." You don't have to decide today, Caleb reminded her. What you need right now is clarity. You can stay here as long as you need. Naya looked at him, surprised. Won't that trouble your sister? Caleb shook his head. Mary has helped many people. She believes everyone deserves a safe place to breathe. Naya turned her attention back to the creek. The water flowed gently over the stones, creating a soft sound that made her feel lighter. But she knew peace couldn't last forever. Her uncle would want answers. The tribe would expect her to return. And she wasn't sure if she was ready to face them yet. Caleb sensed her worry. When you're ready, he said softly, you won't face them alone. Naya's breath caught. The idea of not facing everything by herself brought a strange comfort she hadn't allowed herself to feel before. You've been very kind, she said. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to, Caleb replied simply. Helping someone doesn't need repayment. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of distant hooves, again not rushing, but steady and calm. Naya turned slowly. She recognized the riders approaching. Not angry. Not hurried. Her tribe's elders. Her heart pounded, but she felt stronger than yesterday. This time, she wasn't alone, and she wasn't running. The sound of hooves grew clearer as the riders came closer, steady and unhurried. Morning sunlight glowed across the clearing, giving everything a gentle warmth. Naya stood near the creek, her hands clasped together, her breath shallow but controlled. She had expected this moment to fill her with fear, yet she felt strangely grounded. Maybe it was the peaceful night. Maybe it was Caleb standing quietly beside her. Or maybe it was the understanding that she finally had a voice of her own. Caleb looked at her with a calm expression. You don't have to say anything until you're ready, he said softly. Naya nodded, though her heart still thumped fast beneath her ribs. She watched the riders approach, their silhouettes growing clearer. There were 3 of them, 2 elders and her uncle riding in the middle. Her uncle's face looked tired, lined with worry more than anger. The older men beside him carried the posture of people who came for understanding, not confrontation. Mary stepped out of the cabin, wiping her hands on her apron. She stood beside Caleb, forming a quiet line of support behind Naya. The presence of these 2 people, strangers only yesterday, made her feel less alone than she had in years. The riders stopped a few steps away. Her uncle dismounted first. For a moment, he didn't speak. He simply looked at her, relief flickering in his eyes. The worry he had carried all night was clear on his face. Naya, he said at last, his voice low. You frightened us. We didn't know where you had gone. Naya tightened her fingers together. She had rehearsed dozens of sentences in her mind, but now that the moment was here, everything tangled again. Still, she forced herself to breathe. I needed space, she said softly. I needed to think. Her uncle nodded, though the crease in his forehead deepened. You left without a word. We searched the hills and riverbanks. You are family. We must know where you are. One of the elders stepped forward. His face was calm, weathered by years of responsibility. We came to listen, he said. Your uncle shared what happened. He said you refused the marriage offer. He said you ran away in distress. But we do not want to force you. We want to hear your side. Naya looked at them with surprise. She had expected anger, demands, maybe even scolding. But their tone was gentle, patient. She felt a tremble in her chest, not from fear but from the shock of being given space to speak. She straightened her shoulders slightly. I felt trapped, she said. Everyone talked about what was good for the tribe, but no one asked what I wanted. I don't wish to disrespect anyone, but I cannot agree to a life I did not choose. Her uncle let out a slow breath. He looked older than she remembered, as if worry had aged him overnight. I only wanted what was best for you, he said quietly. Since your parents passed, I tried to guide you. Maybe I pushed too hard. Naya looked at him, feeling both sadness and gratitude. I know you care, but caring also means listening. I want to learn healing. I want to help people. That is what I feel in my heart. The second elder, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. He studied her with thoughtful eyes. We have seen your interest in the healer's work. We know you often visit her to learn. Tell us truthfully. Naya, do you believe this is your path? And Naya's answer came without hesitation. Yes, it is. The elder turned toward her uncle. Then forcing her into marriage will not bring harmony. It will only create bitterness. Her uncle looked down, his shoulders sagging. I only meant to follow tradition, he said slowly. But maybe I forgot that tradition also changes when needed. Mary stepped forward with a gentle voice. She has a good heart, she said. Last night, she spoke with honesty and clarity. She is not running away from responsibility, she is trying to find her place. Caleb said nothing, but his quiet presence supported her more than words could. The elders seemed to notice the calm strength in his posture, and the respect in the way he stood slightly behind Naya, giving her the space to lead her own voice. Her uncle looked at her again. If you return, he said carefully, will you speak to the healer? Will you begin learning properly, not in secret? Naya felt a burst of hope inside her chest. Yes, she whispered. That's all I ever wanted. The older elder nodded. Then it is decided. You may follow the path you choose. The tribe will not force marriage upon you. For a moment, Naya couldn't breathe. Relief washed over her like a warm wave. She didn't realize tears had gathered in her eyes until she blinked them away. Not tears of pain this time. Tears of something lighter. Her uncle stepped closer, but stopped a few steps away, respecting her space. I am sorry, he said, his voice softer than she had ever heard. I did not see how much weight you were carrying. You are stronger than I realized. Naya swallowed hard, her voice trembling with emotion. I never meant to disrespect you. I just felt unheard. Then listen, we shall, her uncle replied. The elders exchanged satisfied looks, as if a balance had been restored. The tension in the air eased gently. One elder looked at Caleb and Mary. Thank you for offering her shelter, he said respectfully. She was safe here. Caleb nodded. Anyone in distress deserves a place to breathe. Mary smiled softly. She is welcome any time. Hearing this kindness made Naya's heart warm again. She had wandered the ridge feeling lost and hopeless, but she now understood that hope could appear where she least expected it. Her uncle stepped forward again. Are you ready to return home? He asked. Naya hesitated. She glanced at Caleb, then at Mary, then at the creek. She wasn't afraid anymore, but she needed a moment to gather her feelings. I will return today, she said, but I want a little more time before we ride back. I need to prepare myself. The elders nodded in agreement. We will wait for you, one of them said kindly. Her uncle and the elders moved their horses to the shade of a nearby tree. Giving her the space she requested, Naya let out a long breath. She turned toward Caleb. I feel like a giant stone has been lifted, she whispered. Caleb smiled gently. You lifted it yourself. I only stood here. Naya let out a small, soft laugh. You do not give yourself enough credit. Mary came over and placed a hand on Naya's arm. You faced your truth with honesty. That takes courage. Naya felt her eyes grow warm again. Thank you both, for everything. Caleb shook his head lightly. No need for thanks. Just promise that you'll take care of yourself. I will, Naya said. She looked at the valley stretching before her. The same valley where she had once felt so small now looked wide and full of possibility. She knew returning home wouldn't solve everything overnight, but she finally had the strength to face her path. Naya took a few quiet steps toward the water, letting the cool breeze settle her thoughts. After a moment, she turned around and walked toward her uncle and the elders. Her steps were steady. Her heart was calm. Caleb and Mary watched her go, proud of the young woman who had found her voice. When Naya reached her uncle, he gave a simple nod of respect. She nodded back. Together, they prepared to return home, not as a broken girl returning in fear, but as a young woman ready to choose her own future. Naya stood beside her uncle and the elders, watching the morning sun spread across the open land. The shadows of the trees stretched long and gentle behind them, and the air felt cool and refreshing. She took a slow breath, feeling the comfort of clarity inside her chest. She wasn't returning home as the frightened girl who had run away the day before. She was returning as someone who had finally spoken her truth, someone who had gained strength from honesty. Her uncle mounted his horse, but before offering her a hand, he paused and looked at her with a thoughtful expression. "We will ride slowly," he said gently. "Take your time." Naya nodded, grateful for the change in his tone. She mounted her horse easily, her movements steady. The elders fell into line beside them. Caleb and Mary stood a few steps away, watching quietly. Caleb lifted his hand in a small wave. Mary smiled warmly. Naya felt a tightness in her chest, the kind that comes from saying goodbye to something safe and important. She rode a few steps, then turned back. "Thank you," she called softly, "for everything." Caleb gave a small nod, the calm and steady kind she had grown used to. "You'll do well," he said. "Trust yourself," Mary added. "Our door is always open." Naya felt a flutter of warmth behind her ribs. Then she turned her horse toward the long trail home, the elders riding beside her. The world looked different now, not because the land had changed, but because something inside her had. The journey back to her village took time, but it didn't feel heavy. Her uncle rode beside her for much of the way, not speaking too much but not distant either. It felt like he was trying to see her anew, not as the child he once cared for, but as a young woman with her own dreams. About halfway down the trail, he cleared his throat. "Naya," he began, "I did not realize how deeply you felt about becoming a healer." She looked at him carefully. "I didn't know how to tell you. Every time I tried, the words felt too small." Her uncle nodded slowly. "Your parents wanted you to grow strong," he said quietly. "I thought guiding your future was the way to honor them. But I see now. Guidance is not the same as choosing for you." Naya felt her chest tighten with emotion. She had waited years to hear words like that. "I never wanted to walk away from family," she said softly. "I only wanted to walk toward who I am." Her uncle gave a gentle sigh. "Then that is what you will do." The rest of the ride passed in comfortable silence. When they reached the hill overlooking the village, Naya felt a nervous flutter in her stomach. Children ran near the riverbank, women carried baskets, and men tended to morning duties. Life continued as always, but she knew something inside her had changed forever. As they entered the village, people looked up in surprise. Some were relieved to see her safe, some curious, and some appeared worried. The healer, an elderly woman with wise eyes, stepped forward slowly. She studied Naya with a blend of concern and pride. "You are back," the healer said gently, "and I sense strength in you today." Naya bowed her head slightly. "I wish to learn from you. I wish to walk the path of healing." The healer's lips curved into a soft smile. "Then your heart has chosen, and I will teach you." Naya felt a wave of emotion flood her chest. For the first time, she felt seen, truly seen. The days that followed were filled with learning. The healer showed her how to crush herbs, how to prepare salves, how to read the body by touch and breath. Naya absorbed everything with eagerness. Her mind felt alive again, her spirit lighter. Her uncle watched quietly from the distance. He did not interfere, did not question. Instead, he supported her by helping where he could, gathering supplies, ensuring she had time for her lessons, and speaking to others in the tribe when needed. Naya's confidence grew. Every morning she woke with purpose, and every evening she fell asleep with peaceful tiredness, rather than confusion. Yet she often found her thoughts drifting back to the ridge, the cabin, and Caleb's calm gaze. She remembered how he had listened without judgment, how he had stood beside her during her hardest moment. She wondered if she would ever see him again. Weeks passed before she got her answer. One afternoon, as she collected herbs near the valley edge, she saw a familiar figure riding slowly along the ridge. The sunlight caught his hat, making the shape unmistakable. Her breath caught for a moment, then softened into a warm feeling. Caleb had returned to his usual trail. He dismounted and walked down toward her. She straightened, brushing dirt from her hands, unable to hide the small smile forming on her face. "You're far from the ridge today," Caleb said, his voice carrying the same calm tone she remembered. Naya smiled. "The healer sent me to gather plants. She says I learn quickly." "I never doubted it," Caleb replied. They walked a few steps together, letting the quiet settle between them like it used to. The wind carried the soft scent of sage, and birds called from the nearby trees. It felt peaceful, natural. "You look stronger," Caleb said softly. Naya nodded. "I feel stronger." "What about your family?" he asked. "They listen now," she said. "It isn't perfect, but it is better." He seemed relieved. "Good. You deserve to be heard." They walked a little farther, stopping near a flat rock overlooking the river. Naya set her basket down and looked out at the sparkling water. "I was afraid everything would fall apart that day," she said, "but instead, it came together." Caleb smiled faintly. "Sometimes, life opens a door right when it feels like it's closing." Naya looked at him with gratitude. "If you hadn't stopped on the ridge, I don't know how far I would have fallen inside my own thoughts." "You didn't fall," Caleb said. "You paused, and sometimes that's enough." She let out a soft laugh. "You always find simple words for complicated things." "It's how I understand the world," he answered with a shrug. They fell into a quiet moment again, but it was a comfortable silence, one filled with understanding rather than fear. Naya felt the breeze tug gently at her hair. She looked at Caleb, and for a moment, the world felt perfectly still. "I am glad you came back," she said. "I wanted to see how you were doing," he said. "I told myself I was just checking the trail, but I think I hope to see you too." I wanned. Naya felt warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't heavy or confusing. It was calm like the first morning sun after a long storm. Caleb stepped back toward his horse. "I should get going," he said softly. "But I'll be riding this trail often." Naya picked up her basket. "Then I suppose I'll be gathering plants often." He smiled. She smiled back. As he rode away, she watched him until he became a small shape on the ridge. She didn't feel sad. She felt hopeful. Their paths were separate, but they crossed in a way neither would forget. Naya turned toward her village, her heart steady. She had found her purpose, found her strength, and found her voice. And somewhere along the ridge, a young cowboy rode with a quiet pride, knowing he had been there when a struggling soul needed steadiness. She walked home with the sunlight warm on her back, ready for her next lesson, her next step, her new beginning. She was no longer the girl who ran away. She was the woman who walked forward,